All right, we're about to get started. Give just a couple more seconds for everybody to get their audio configured, and then we'll jump right into it. We got a lot to cover today, and really appreciate you taking time out of your day to hear more about what Maxio has been up to over the last couple months and where we're going next. So thank you again for joining. All right, it looks like we're getting pretty good coverage, so we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So if you haven't met me before, my name is Chris Weber, lead our product organization. I've got a few of our esteemed members joining me today to cover some of the recent items that we've released from Maxio. We've got Grant, Nestor, Kristyn, and Jonathan that'll all be taking a section of the presentation. The intent is we really kind of cover those meaty items and impactful items over the last several months, but we're constantly releasing features every single day, multiple times a day, which is really exciting under a continuous release process with zero downtime. We'll talk about our strategic themes, iterating and going really deep in a couple specific areas while still being broad and responsive to quick wins and improvements holistically in the application. And then, we try to make this interactive. We try to do a few live demos as well, showcase the functionality. And with that too, we also love questions, comments as we go through. With the webinar solution that we're using, just a couple call outs, housekeeping wise, there's like a general chat and then there's a Q&A piece. So try to use the Q&A. It allows us to directly respond and kind of mark that we've covered it, whether through the content we're presenting today or whether directly. We'll try to take those questions as we go, but we've got dedicated Q&A time at the end. And then if we don't get to your question live, we're going to try to reach out to you immediately after this webinar follows and provide some more context. Before we jump into the actual content, I do want to continue to reinforce our roadmap is shaped directly by you, our customers, our prospects, and where the market's going. Just to give you an example, like yesterday alone, there was actually 7 features that were released that were surfaced directly from you all, our customers, via support tickets or input. Generally, they're like quality of life improvements or quick wins. Those are the features we love or the requests we love because we can knock those out really, really rapidly, sometimes even the same day. We've had multiple examples of feedback coming in 24 hours later, able to incorporate that feedback in. So not just the meaty features that we're covering in today's session, but those little quality of life. Hey, I wish Maxio would do this differently. We love that feedback. So let me show you, what that roadmap looks like, just to kind of cover that. So if you're still seeing my screen here, if you click the link that we're going to post here in the chat in a second, it'll take you to this customer-facing kind of roadmap. The way we kind of look at it and categorize it is those items that are recently launched, those items that are in flight, and kind of where we're going next. This is a very short-term lens, generally over the next 30, 60 days, not longer, right? So if something's in flight, it's coming very soon. Up next, currently actively in flight. And some items that we're even going to demo here today are in the recently launched. If you click in on any of the items, it'll actually give you some context of how we're thinking about it, what the problem definition is, what's in scope, what potentially is out of scope. And if you love the item, please give us an upvote. So if you actually click any of the links on these categories, it'll take you to a quick survey where you're just inputting your email information and then, hey, do you want to just get notified of it, or would you like early access to this feature? Would you like to be a design partner, et cetera? That all behind the scenes flows through, correlates to your actual instance, your account, and goes directly to myself and this team to better help us prioritize. The other thing that we love is this submit a feature request. So this is the item that I was just referring to. No feature is too small or too large. When you click on that link, it'll take you to this survey, right? You just provide that email address, and then it's just going to ask you a couple plain text questions of what would you love to see happen in Maxio. The thing that I continue to stress in these sessions is that that's not a black box. It's same process. Actually goes into our CRM. We enrich it with a ton of different information, articulate our vision. Generally, we'll actually try to get back to you. If you submit a request, we'll send you back, hey, here's how Maxio is kind of thinking about it. And then certainly can keep you in the loop as that makes its way onto the roadmap, or if it's one of those quick win items, we're able to quickly iterate on it, can provide an email notification once that's released. So extremely customer-centric road mapping process and responsiveness. We always allocate capacity to be responsive to that team. In fact, we've got a whole kind of squad of PM-led and engineers that are there to help address some of those things. So, those are the housekeeping items. Please submit that product feedback. We love to hear it. On the themes, again, if you attended this first session earlier this year, these are kind of the core themes that we're not just going kind of broad in, we're going very deep in as well. So the three core themes, with a fourth as a whole, business unit and product line as well. Maxio Payments is the tokenization and monetization strategies. So everything from selling, how do you price, package, support different wallet strategies, token strategies, maybe even custom currencies, all kind of scoped within this year's roadmap. Insights and analytics, right here at Maxio, we don't view it just as the billing issues or the billing problems. We also think in terms of the analytics and the rev rec in conjunction with those billing scenarios. So going really deep in the insights and analytics. And then third-party integrations. We know that Maxio is a part of your overall financial operations ecosystem. So continuing to partner with newer, innovative companies. You're going to see several new integrations that we've launched over the last 30, 60 days that Nestor is actually going to take us through, especially on the tax front. So that's going to be really exciting. And then rounding it out with some of the new innovations that we're doing in Maxio Payments, specifically around surcharging. So a deep dive and put that in place. Today, we're covering some of the product catalog upgrades and functionality that we've got in our advanced billing module. Some of the ability to now do list price and sale price functionality for subscriptions, better track discounts versus always leveraging coupons. We've also relaunched, our Maxio metering offering and the ability to do advanced formulas. We're going to cover that. And then in the Maxio application, you can also now leverage, contract ingestion to double check sales order information that's coming from the CRM, or just load directly, go straight from PDF to sales order for processing inside of Maxio. On the insights and analytics front, we're going to cover our advanced revenue summary and the ability to sync those journal entries to the GL, starting with QuickBooks, some rev rec improvements, some advanced submo improvements around average revenue per unit, and then some enhanced functionality around our revenue recognition, especially if you want to, do FX restatement and cumulative translation accounting as well. And then, as I mentioned, on the third-party integration, multiple tax integrations, Intacct enhancements, some unique functionality around our integrations and the ability to configure those to prevent blocking issues. And then, as I teased before, surcharging and balances from our Maxio Payments functionality. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Grant here in a second, who's going to talk us through some of the improvements making it in this webinar around the tokenization and monetization. Grant, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. First, we're going to kick off with a general group of updates around our product catalog. There we go. Next slide. This is a suite of enhancements that are really bringing to the fore a whole bunch of new functionality and use cases that weren't possible before, and laying a new foundation for how you define your product catalog and sell your products. A quick note first on nomenclature. We are realigning our nomenclature with how the market talks about these things. So what used to be called a product in our application will now be called a plan, and what used to be called a component will now be called a product. And this makes a lot of sense, because if I ask you what you sell and what you put on your invoice, you'd say, well, that's your products. And plans, what plans really become are bundles of products. So the plans are how you sell, and the products are what you sell. And now products are really that atomic building block of your product catalog. The first thing that we had to do to enable this was decouple some subscription behaviors from the catalog and the plan object. So now you can set your billing intervals, your expirations, your trials, and your setup fees directly on the subscription. And if you're concerned about backward compatibility, well, you can still set those things on the plan, and then that will become the default for the subscription. One cool thing for our customers that have $0 price points on their products today, no longer do you have to do that. You can now create subscriptions with a la carte selections from your products and make subscriptions in that way. We've also enabled trials and term subscriptions to be compatible. So this is really good for our customers that have been interested in or are trying to do today in a hacky way, a trial to term conversion. As I alluded to before, this is part one of a two-part vision. So what's coming next is enhancements to that plan object and how we are going to package together products into a plan and then enable some kind of fancy pricing, nuanced pricing use cases within those products and how they roll up to the plan. So super excited about that, and that's coming in the back half of the year. Now, since this is so much functionality altogether, we are running a beta program for this, and we're actively looking for beta partners. It's not a lot of risk to raise your hand. So I would encourage you, if any of this has your spidey senses tingling, please raise your hand and opt into that beta program. And actually, initially, it will be an in-app guide that will take you through all of the changes, both small and big, and just make it super clear for you. And if you decide it's not for you, you don't have to complete the process. So low risk to raise your hand, and please do so. We're looking for some beta customers. And that concludes this slide. Next slide, please. Okay, we have a new set of functionality that's also tied in with everything that I just reviewed, so you get it all together. You don't have to use this, though, if you do upgrade into the new product catalog. This is list pricing and sales pricing, and from that, implied discounts. So it's a new type of discounting that we're supporting within Maxio. There are two downstream places where this would show up. It shows up on the invoice. This is an example here, and it's actually optional. So if you just wanted to use it in the other place, which is in reporting, and specifically when you're doing allocations within Maxio Core's advanced revenue, you can just do it in that one place. So this information would convey to the Maxio Core transaction and is available for, mostly this will be of interest to you if you have a sales-led go-to-market motion or a hybrid go-to-market motion. Typically what you're doing is creating a set of list prices or a list price book, and then your sales reps are selling off of that. So really good analytics can come from this that tells you how your sales reps are actually selling against your list pricing, and then also gives you this nice functionality here of how that can convey on the invoice, nice constant reminder to your customers that are receiving a discount. Next slide, please. We've been talking about this formula-based billing and variations of it for quite some time at Maxio. We're really excited about this one. It is the ability to construct meters construct formulas using one or more meters for the same stream. And we support some common functions and operators that you can see here in the image. And you just go and you freeform define the formula that you want. It shows up both in your billing and it shows up in your, we have a new feature recently called meter fields. And this feature is very cool. It is the ability to put a meter on top of a stream and then compute that meter and have that show up as metadata on your invoice. So information on your invoice. And now you can use the advanced formulas between meters also as a part of the meter fields. Next slide, please. And we have a little bit of a video here that I'll voice over. So this is our sales order AI ingestion tool. You can create sales orders now by uploading or even dragging and dropping your sales order documents, PDF form, or image into the uploader, and you can see how it's processing there. And then it is going to create that sales order for you and give you the opportunity to edit it review all the information that's coming across, make edits if needed. Sometimes there might be more information here that you want in there that's actually not conveyed on the document itself. So you make your edits, and then you can go ahead and process that sales order. So super awesome new piece of AI functionality for those folks that are using sales orders. Really good opportunity to obviously cut down on the manual workload there, and even reduce the the user error that sometimes comes from manual entry.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. And one thing I'll add too, if you're also using either our Maxio native file attachment functionality or Dropbox integration, when you process that sales order all the way through, that contract actually gets stored if Dropbox is enabled directly in that Dropbox folder. So it'll create a folder for that customer, store that contract. If you're using the Maxio native version of the file attachment, it's just going to store it inside of Maxio. But then that same PDF or that sales order is available to send along with the invoice. So neat functionality of it rolling all the way through your workflow. So you're only really having to upload that document once to generate everything that Grant just covered, plus store it and then include it when you issue the invoice to your end customer. So really excited to roll that out, especially for those customers that maybe aren't leveraging a CRM integration directly, want to be able to drag those in. The other call out there too is it supports kind of one contract upload in that video, but you can ultimately drag multiple contracts over as well, and we'll process and create those sales orders for your review. So definitely doubling down on the trust but verify approach with what was shown in that video of being able to double check all of the translation from that process. So thanks again, Grant. Moving on to our insights and analytics category. I've got a couple slides here, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kristyn to cover the rest of the functionality. But the first we're really excited about. So our advanced revenue summary report is the kind of subledger of the revenue recognition inside of Maxio. We are rolling out the ability to create those revenue entries in your general ledger via the consolidated entry at the bottom of that report. So I'm going to demo it here live in a second, but just kind of want to demonstrate the flow here. You have the ability to trigger that sync on demand or actually set it up for a schedule configuration. For QuickBooks, most common QuickBooks Online configurations, you might be using things like class. You can build and configure the class to sync to QuickBooks. You can also filter and build several different reports all configured. So you're not limited to just a single report syncing to your general ledger. And then if the general ledger supports the ability to include by default an attachment like QuickBooks Online does, we'll include an actual export as a work paper in support of that journal entry. So let me shift over and let's see it in action because I love showing off this functionality. So in my demo instance here, I have a advanced revenue summary report. In this demo data, you can kind of see the invoices for the period. Now notice I've got it configured for the, essentially the last 4 months, including June. You can see kind of any of the reclass entries if you've got, a unique chart of account set up, the detailed revenue recognition entry, and then the consolidated journal entry. Most of our customers take this consolidated journal entry, review it, probably do exactly what I was talking about, exporting the CSV of the report, and then creating that journal entry manually inside of your general ledger. So, we're rolling this out. It's currently in beta. So we're going to post the link here for you to opt into that. We're rapidly working on expanding all of the GLs like NetSuite. We're targeting a release of this week. We're going to then quickly roll out Intacct, Xero, and Rillet as well. At that point, then we'll make this generally available. So just a quick call out there. But if you're using QuickBooks Online today, want to put this in action, it's a very simple feature flag that our team can enable in your instance. But here's the ultimate experience. It flags that you have a report to configure for the GL. It opens up the drawer, and these are the two modes that I mentioned. You've got the manual or the scheduled sync, and then the option to include that work paper. If you want to preview those journal entries for the period, you can. Now notice it's actually detecting that I've already configured other reports that have very similar configurations. So it's saying, hey, these potentially duplicate this functionality. Do you actually want to view those other reports? We'll go ahead and save anyways, so we can see what the preview of the journal entry looks like. And then notice it is respecting the close dates. So it's saying, hey, Maxio is already closed in March. Same with April, same with May. So the only eligible journal entry that we're going to sync here is for June. From here, I can go ahead and trigger that sync to QuickBooks. I want to look at the additional configuration options for a second, double check everything, looks good. So I can go ahead and run and trigger that sync. And we'll see, it'll trigger that sync, it'll refresh. And now down below in that table, we have the QuickBooks icon. So the same thing that we do everywhere else in Maxio, where we're indicating kind of the third parties that we integrate with. You can actually click in and view that journal entry. So I hope I'm still logged in my sandbox here. I am. And we can see that consolidated journal entry is created within that period. Nice little memo note with the instance and that work paper, which is the export of the report, already pre-attached for you. Some important call outs. So you can actually configure this report on that schedule. So I could schedule it and I could run it every day at 8 a.m. Important caveat, it is not going to create a new journal entry per month. It'll actually update and trigger an edit to that journal entry that already exists in QuickBooks. So as we talk and Maxio talks about continuous close and automations, you can actually build this report to every morning send at 8 a.m. Now, the neat thing, and I'll go ahead and click sync now so we can see it in the history here in a second, right? It'll refresh, kind of try to sync. It'll show in the history that it's actually skipped the sync here, right? So even though we're, attempting to sync it, we've already synced it manually here for the 49,000 for the month of June. It is skipping it. So it's smart enough to realize, hey, there's actual no change in the journal entry. So let's not trigger an update to that journal entry in QuickBooks just for the sake of sending the same values. It's going to skip it. So when it detects a change, it'll update that same journal entry. If you have your report to roll forward, so you're using one of our configuration options where it's like this month and the last 3 months, right? As soon as June moves on to July, now July will start syncing as well. So you can build on all of those automations. If you come over into the report list, it's really easy to identify that these reports are scheduled to sync. And you can see I've got 2 here, and those were some of the flags that it was making earlier, saying, hey, are you sure that you want to sync this? There's already a report that's very similar that's configured to it. The other thing is you can click in on the history. You can actually view, when it was triggered, who was it triggered by, a link to the journal entry as well, and some really robust kind of logging. Let's say you no longer want to have this report configured to sync. You can just disconnect this report. It'll give you a little warning. And now this report is disconnected. A couple things to call out. This does not rely on the actual GL integration sync. It is, it relies on the configuration and the credentials from that connected sync, but it is fully independent. So these reports will sync on the schedule that is defined within the report itself and not reliant on the QuickBooks integration sync. It is only limited to the journal entry functionality itself, even though we're summarizing the invoices and recognizable revenue. Here, it is not going to trigger a full sync of QuickBooks. We've got a lot of customers that prefer to review all the data that's going to send to QuickBooks in that process every day. You can configure this to run automatically. So I'm going to jump back to my slides here, and then I'll pass it over to the team. Again, a caveat there, it is in early access or beta because we're working on each general ledger. Each general ledger has its own nuances and specifics. Target date for NetSuite is hopefully by the end of the week. And then once all those general ledgers are available, this will be broadly enabled in GA. And so you'll be able to see that and configure it if you are an admin user and you're using our advanced revenue summary reporting functionality. So really excited, a long requested functionality. That's actually one of the most upvoted items to tie it back to our roadmap and that voting process that we've had over the years. So really excited to kind of bring that to market. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kristyn to take us through the remaining slides.
All right, thanks, Chris. Hey, everyone. It's good to see you guys. So the first change here I want to cover is actually improvements to our remaining performance obligation reporting. So this one is very relevant for any of you guys using our advanced revenue module. So RPO is essentially your contracted revenue backlog. So the revenue that you've committed to recognize in the future, but haven't yet recognized. So we already had reporting built around this, but to really simplify and be able to easily visualize how this report is structured and what you have remaining, we've added some new columns to this report for unscheduled, future scheduled, and total. And you can kind of see those boxed in the screenshot here. So basically what unscheduled is going to show you is any revenue that is contracted, but does not yet have a date or recognition dates associated to it. Then you, of course, have your future scheduled, which is scheduled out for future periods. And then the total is going to be the aggregate of the two. One other call out here is you can also filter specifically the report to only see performance obligations that still have unscheduled amounts remaining. So if you need to quickly action those or understand the population of performance obligations with unscheduled revenue, those are very easy to identify on this report now. So it should really streamline the process here for our advanced revenue users. And we can go to the next one, please. All right, so this one is a very exciting change to our advanced subscription momentum report. So we have now added a new metric around ARPU. So this one is a really exciting and useful metric to identify revenue per unit, so you can really evaluate your deal quality across your book of business. So this performance compares your actual contracted price against your list price to show how close to list your team is actually selling your products. Also identifies the % discount and how that looks. So why does this matter? So it really just gives you that needed visibility into pricing consistency across deals and across your team. You're, of course, able to segment the report as you were for different slicing and dicing to be able to see these metrics, making it super valuable when you're looking at that book of business. So as a quick example on here, you can see how we're calculating this. So for the example where you have 10 units with a list price of $1,200 per unit per year, but you're actually selling it for $1,020 per unit per year, you can see that we flag that ARPU as $1,020 per unit with a performance of 85%, thus a discount of that 15%. So really excited to be able to provide this one to you guys. Also another kind of long requested spin on our subscription momentum report. So a really cool one to get out there.
Yeah, and Kristyn, if I can tie it to a concept that Grant was talking about as well. This is a great example of tying in the billing scenarios, right? That previously on the subscription piece, what Grant was showing is the ability to reflect for subscriptions what that sales price is on the invoice, because you really want to communicate that discount. Having that discount flow all the way in and be persistent throughout our reporting is part of exactly what I was talking about, being able to do this from a list price, sales price perspective on the subscriptions, flow into the reporting. I think I saw the corner of my screen some comments as well. If you're just managing contracts and transactions, that list price field is available as well. If you don't see it active, let us know. We can enable that, but that rolls into this reporting so you can get it whether you're managing subscriptions through our advanced billing module or just managing contracts directly. But love the tie-in, and thanks for the explanation, Kristyn.
Yeah, of course. All right, we can move on to our next one here. And we're going back to advanced revenue summary. So an enhancement on this report is actually related to FX restatement. So this is really critical for any of our customers that are operating in multiple currencies. So you'll see we have these calculation options here that allow you to look in your local currency, or we now have this FX restated reporting option that's going to let you translate your recognized and deferred revenue rates in alignment with GAAP and IFRS requirements. So that whenever utilizing this setting, your recognized revenue is going to use those monthly average rates, which is appropriate for income statement reporting, whereas your deferred revenue and balance sheet amounts are going to use that end of period rate as expected. As also noted on the screen, you can see that it also supports the cumulative translation adjustment reporting for teams. So really like all-in solution to be able to accurately understand the FX impact. We know this can be a very challenging aspect of multi-currency reporting, and kind of knowing what the numbers mean and how they're moving and how much of the impact you're actually seeing month over month is truly related to FX. So really excited to see this one get out as well, because I think it will make a huge difference for our multi-currency users out there. And then we do have one last insight and analytic update here. And this is for our customers using Maxio's MCP. So if you are currently connecting AI tools like Claude, ChatGPT directly to your Maxio data, this is going to be a huge quality of life improvement for you. So up until now, when you asked your AI assistant to maybe pull a report for you, say you wanted to understand MRR for a certain period or what your AR aging is right now, it would actually build that report on demand, which meant you had to wait for the results because you had to wait for that report to build and then present those results to you. So what we've done now is we actually pre-generate the most commonly requested reports on a schedule. So they are just available and ready for your AI assistant to provide the results to you whenever you ask for them. So you're getting a much more instantaneous response. There's no build time, no timeout risk. So if you are using MCP today, which if you aren't, you absolutely should be, it's an incredible tool, and you're looking to better understand our reporting outputs without the wait, this should make a huge difference for you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Kristyn. And another shout out here too to the team. Definitely want to, if you're using the MCP today and you have other tools or scenarios that you want to see, this is an area that the team can be highly responsive in and building those out. We actually have some really exciting improvements coming to the MCP with some of the new functionality that the LLM providers have rolled out. So more to come on that, just to kind of tease the ability to kind of preview some of the changes directly in the LLM via like a Maxio UI is coming soon. But if there's other tools or use cases and you're, view yourself as kind of a power user of Claude or the LLMs, let us know. We would love to partner with you and make sure we continue to roll out additional use cases there. But we do have a pretty broad set of tools available today that support the most common use cases. But always looking for additional feedback there. All right, we're going to move on to our third-party integrations. We're going to pass it over to Nestor to take us through some of the tax integrations and providers, and then we'll pass it back to Kristyn. So Nestor, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Chris. And as you mentioned, some of those most commonly used tools. If you can go to the next slide, I'm happy to announce that we have 3 additional service providers. This is based off of your feedback and the ability to create an expanded and diversified ecosystem with these partners. So now you get to choose the tax provider that fits your stack, and it's all fully integrated within Maxio. Whether you're navigating the creation of invoices through contracts or issuing invoices through subscriptions. All of these tax service providers give you the ability to manage the full life cycle of the invoice, also handle tax inclusive pricing, voids, refunds. You get to manage the credentials within Maxio. And more importantly, there is some slight differences similar to the general ledgers. On TaxJar and Numeral, for example, you'll manage the product codes within the Maxio product catalog in comparison to Sphere, where you'll manage the tax mappings and tax categories directly inside Sphere. But we'll go into those details in the next slide. We'll start with TaxJar to keep it at a high level. As I mentioned, any sort of invoices create that transaction on the TaxJar side, refunds, negations, and then voids just delete the transaction completely. We give you the ability to preview the sales tax calculation when you're previewing and sending an invoice through a contract. Whether you're using public sign-up pages to capture self-service subscription registrations, and then more importantly, when the invoice is issued, we'll send that additional request to TaxJar to create the transaction. So all of it real time, no delays there, and really neat functionality if you're a US-based merchant, mostly focused on SMB. TaxJar is a good option for you there. We'll go to the next jar, which is Numeral. Numerals supports over 80 different countries, also handles multi-currency. As I mentioned earlier, you get to configure some of those tax codes directly inside the Maxio product catalog, so you keep everything in one single place. We'll continue managing the life cycle of the invoice. Some neat functionality that I really do appreciate on the Numeral side is their developer-centric approach, giving you the logs for every interaction, allowing you to distinguish between a test versus a production instance. These are features and functionality that we were able to add to the integration. And, just huge shout out to that team for just collaborating with us in sync. The next integration is Sphere. For Sphere, also a very variety of countries that are supported. I think it's 90 plus countries supported through this one. On the Sphere side, there are some relative improvements that we're making to continue managing that life cycle of the invoice. Again, the tax categories are configured inside Sphere, but we'll make any of the invoice credit note information available over the Maxio API so that it gets consumed by the Sphere side and provide those transactions, those refunds as part of that integration. And again, one of the things that I want to call out is this is really thanks to you, our customers, for providing that feedback, wanting to engage with these different service tax providers, that we were able to make it happen. And again, a huge shout out to the Sphere team for working with us on getting the integration configured and over the finish line. We will share those links, so please upvote, get registered for early access beta. This is the perfect time to provide any sort of feedback, maybe edge cases that you might have, and really looking forward to work with some of you individually. With that being said, Chris, I'll go ahead and take over the screen share so I can go through two very quick examples here. Let me.
Yeah, Nestor gets configured there and pulls that up. Just keep in mind this is 3 new integrations, but joining our existing Anrock and Avalara integrations and Avalara ELR integration as well. So as Nestor was articulating, really making sure that we're well integrated with probably your existing tax providers. Some of them are newer entrances to the market, but take a really unique spin on it and have had great partnership in working with those teams to build these integrations, and really excited to bring you 3 net new integrations. So back to you.
And with Numeral, things like monitoring, filing and remitting, and then of course calculating tax within your billing engine. So here we're inside the Numeral dashboard. You get to see, sort of that tax exposure per jurisdiction. If you have multiple countries, this is also the table where you'll see those varying jurisdictions. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I do appreciate about the Numeral application is that you have this developer centric approach to basically just surface logs, transactions, and any interactions that we facilitate over both systems over APIs. So in here, we'll just see the logs and the transactions. I'm just going to pull up the logs so that I can show you some of those interactions that are happening from Maxio coming over to Numeral. So the first one is here. I have an invoice for a contract that I created in Core. You still have the same similar functionality that you would get with other tax providers, where you can reestimate the sales tax. What we do here, we basically just invoke Numeral, we provide the right information, and then we provide that estimated sales tax on the invoice. Additionally, if you're previewing or sending, you can verify that the tax is applied on that landing page or the PDF as you're getting ready to issue it out. For now, I'll just go ahead and issue it to the billing portal. A quick little plug here. If you are an eBill user and looking for a self-service solution to capture payment, render the invoice history, please do reach out about the Maxio invoicing suite, which is what we're going to be moving in the future, giving the entire suite, whether you're using Core or advanced billing, to provide the functionality that you see here today. So we created one transaction on the Core side. Now I'm going to go into the subscription or advanced billing to build a subscription. Here I already have some information. Again, you can preview the cost of that. We're going to go ahead and just create that subscription as well, just to kind of go to Numeral now, refresh those logs. We'll go ahead and click refresh here. And then we can see whether we have any sort of successful calls, any sort of errors that we might have. Again, if you're using this in a test mode, you can toggle the test mode to kind of verify that information. We can also see the transactions that get populated, and we'll go ahead and just refresh those that were created in the last 12 hours here. Let me toggle that. So here we can see that transaction that we created for one of those invoices. It seems like maybe there were some sort of wrong information potentially on my subscription for creating that second transaction, or there might be a delay here. Let me go ahead and refresh one more time. Yeah, there might be just sometimes if there is not a matching state or zip code, we expect the tax service providers to validate that information and provide that response, and then we can again verify that that's what is going on here. You could actually see on the logs that is the case. So I have a state and zip code mismatch that is logged on the Numeral side, and also the request gets consumed on the Maxio side, so that you can see why potentially tax wasn't applied to a specific invoice. So that is for Numeral. We'll quickly shift over into Sphere. The Sphere dashboard is a little bit different, but does also provide that visual map, that visual guide of where you have tax exposure, where you might already have some transactions coming in. In the same way, you do have the ability to kind of drill down to the customers that are syncing across Maxio into Sphere. And on the Sphere application, it's a little different. You don't have, you basically go into the specific customer to verify any sort of associated transactions to that customer, which is what you see here. And, similar to what I showed on the other integration, you have those same actions where you can re-estimate sales tax. If all the information checks out, we get the estimated sales tax back. Different currencies are supported. I believe on this one I'm using euros. And when we create that specific, when we issue out that invoice or send that invoice, that basically is the trigger to Sphere to generate that transaction. So here we've created the first one for the invoice related to the contract. We'll go to the other side and just also preview the cost on this specific subscription. Go ahead and create that as well. And now one specific difference here on this integration is that we do need to run a sync on the Sphere side so that we can pull any sort of new information. Here we see that the latest transaction that came in today is from Texas. You can actually click on that and you can see that transaction from the subscription on this site as well. So very similar, like I mentioned, we're managing that life cycle of the invoice and then making sure that the invoices generate the transactions and as well as any sort of adjustments related to credit note applications. But yeah, that is it for the demo. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand it back to Kristyn.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to roll right into some GL updates, kind of on the other side of the house of our integration improvements. So before we get into what's new with Intacct, I did kind of want to quickly frame the integration. So for those of you that are frequent attendees, you might remember that we actually covered a new and improved Intacct integration kind of mid to late last year during one of these webinars. And for those of you using Sage Intacct, Maxio really is going to serve as your billing, subscription, and reporting layer, and treating that Intacct system as your general ledger. So the integration that we've built really keeps those two systems in sync automatically with a bidirectional data flow between your critical objects here. So you see items, customers, invoices, etc. But there's more now than there was last time we talked about it. So notably, we have added refund bidirectional syncing as well as dimension support. And I really want to touch on dimension a bit because it is such a core classification system that is used in Intacct for tagging financial records. So you can tag department, location, class, etc. And pretty much any meaningful report you're going to run in your Intacct ecosystem is going to rely pretty heavily on those dimensions being accurately applied. So previously, those were having to be manually handled. So if you were to create an invoice and say Maxio Core and sync that into Intacct, it's not going to have the dimensions on there. So I will kind of walk through what that's going to look like. But first, we will talk about send and get refunds for just a brief second. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself there, Chris. So on the refund side, so this is just closing a gap that a lot of our Intacct customers had been asking about. So previously, as I mentioned, the integration handled invoices, payments, customers, etc., but did not handle refunds created in either system. So now that Intacct natively has a customer refund object that is supported. We were able to enhance our integration accordingly. So now have a proper bidirectional sync for that refund object. So I just wanted to call that out. It really kind of closes the kind of final loop on the objects that we like to pass bidirectionally. So really excited to really close that out and get Intacct in alignment with NetSuite, QuickBooks Online, and our other GL integrations. So then we can step into dimensions. So before I do a quick demo of what this looks like, I did want to high level cover off on kind of the structure and how we're thinking about dimensions with Maxio. So as expected, Sage Intacct is going to be the absolute source of truth for these dimensions. So how we've decided to address it in our platform is we've added a sync step that's going to basically pull all the dimension values, all the optionality from your Intacct instance, and make those available for persistence on customer records, transactions, et cetera, in Maxio to push that right back down whenever you're building objects out in our system. So we actually have a series of inheritance levels. So first, there's a top level inheritance at the integration itself where you're able to set defaults. If you were to create a new customer, it's going to inherit those defaults, but you can, of course, override. And then when you build out your transactions, it's also going to inherit from the customer, but you have the ability to override. And I think the structure that's the most critical to explain here is how we're handling between our transaction object and the invoice line item. So it's the invoice line item that's actually going to sync down into Intacct and store that dimension object. But because of how we handle our reporting in Maxio Core and the criticality of that being the accurate and defined data for your revenue reporting and everything else, we wanted to make sure that our transaction and invoice line items in Maxio are very tightly coupled with respect to dimensions. So I can take over the screen share now, Chris, and kind of walk you through what that's going to look like. Let's see what we are going to do. All right, and can you guys see that? Great. So we're going to start with the very top level of that tree, which is our settings. So this is our Intacct integration page. So you can see all the settings that had existed previously, and now you have this optionality here at the bottom to pre-configure your default dimensions that you want to allocate to any newly created customers that are going to exist in Maxio Core. So of course you can define these however you so choose. It's going to pull in all the dimensions from your Intacct instance. So I'm not going to actually save that because I'm gonna leave how it is. But then I'll pop over into creating a customer record and kind of show you how it looks from there. So pre-populated some of the information on the customer, but you'll see again, we have inherited the dimensions that are the default that we set on our integration page, but I'm going to change these up. So we're going to go with a Boston focus on this one. So we're going to have the location be Boston instead of USA 1. We're going to make it Boston Properties, and we'll change our employee to Tom. So then whenever we get to the point where we are building out our transactions, do a quick contract there, we're going to add a bronze subscription and implementation for this. So this is just, you know, our standard build out for our transactions. So we're going to make we're going to do $1,000 a month for a year for that. And we're going to do a $3,000 implementation fee for that as well. So whenever you're configuring this transaction, this is where you have the ability to define your dimensions for the transaction itself. So once again, it is inheriting from the customer level defaults. So we're going to change the first one. And instead of Boston, we're going to change it back to say USA 1 and maybe make this one ADP. Sure. And then we're going to take the employee off entirely, just so you guys can see the distinction when we sync these down. All right, so we're going to go ahead and submit our transactions. And so now you will see we have all of our 12 invoices. The one from today will get queued up to send. So we'll go ahead and run our sync really quick. And while we do that, I did want to cover off on what this would look like on our side. So you can see we have our invoice structure. And then if we open up our invoice line items, you can see that it does have our Intacct dimensions stored on them. But as I noted, because we are really making the control here, the transaction, you don't actually have the ability to edit your invoice line item dimensions. It's all an inheritance from the transaction itself. So if you were to open the associated transaction, you can see the dimensions in a match stored there as well, and also have the ability from this page to edit them. So if you were to want to change your dimensions, you can edit from the transaction, and it will then be subsequently inherited into the invoice line item. Now, the caveat with that is once any invoice line items for the transaction are synced to Intacct, you are no longer able to edit it because we want those dimensions to stay in lockstep between our system and Intacct. And in the event that we enhance reporting in the future to allow these dimensions to pivot, I know this kind of tees into what Chris was showing earlier, right? Like we have automated journal entries. If you were wanting to aggregate or, those based on these dimensions, we need to ensure that our transactions are in absolute lockstep with our ILIs that are being sent downstream. So really critical that we handle it this way. So just kind of wanted to show you guys that piece of it. So let's see if we're synced over. All right, great. So we can pop that open there. And then just to kind of close off on that, if we go back into our transaction and try to edit it now, we are no longer allowed to. So just to kind of to close the gap on that. So whenever we open our invoice here, again, you can see that it has inherited all of the dimensions that we defined on the invoice line items. So our overridden one that we made USA and ADP is flagged as expected. And then of course, the one we left the defaults on for Boston, and Tom. So yeah, that is what we are working with our dimensions. So I can stop screen sharing and give it back to you, Chris. And I think I have one more to cover. All right, great. So for my final update here today, we have continue on error. So I know we've kind of been focused on Intacct, but this change actually applies across 6 of our different integrations today. So the problem we're solving here is previously, in the event that you would have a single record failure due to maybe a mapping error or a missing field somewhere, it would actually halt the entirety of the sync. So it would stop where it ended in the step that you were on, and you would have to go manually resolve that attribute or that object and then rerun the sync, right? That can be very cumbersome for someone running a very high volume business. So what this change allows is it will actually, instead of hard failing the sync at this point, it will skip it, mark it for later remediation, and then continue on. So you're not getting this backlog that's preventing you from finishing out a sync. So anytime it's a recoverable error, it's going to do that. Of course, there are still some top level errors you would not want it to continue, and it still will halt in those aspects. This is only for something that is recoverable and should allow continuation. So this is available. If you are interested in this, it is generally available. Hop on into your integration admin page and just go ahead and turn on continue on error. It's available for NetSuite, Sage Intacct, QuickBooks Online, Rillet, Xero, and Salesforce. So go check it out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristyn. Really appreciate it. All right. And we're going to pass it over to Jonathan. We've got a couple really exciting updates for those that are leveraging Maxio Payments. And if you're not today, I think what Jonathan's about to showcase might really pique your interest either way. So Jonathan, passing it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Happy Tuesday, y'all. Let's talk about one of the most immediate ways Maxio Payments can reduce your cost of getting paid: credit card surcharging. Here's the reality. Credit card processing fees are one of those costs that quietly erode your margins month after month. For most B2B SaaS companies, that's somewhere between 1.5% and 3.5% on every card transaction. Multiply that across your entire customer base, you're looking at a meaningful hit to revenue. And most teams are just accepting it as the cost of doing business. It doesn't have to be that way. Surcharging lets you offset those fees by passing cost on to your customers who choose to pay by credit card. And the key word here is choose. Customers who prefer to avoid the surcharge can pay by ACH instead, which keeps the relationship positive and gives them agency over how they're billed. What makes us powerful inside Maxio is the simplicity of setup. You configure your surcharge rules once, and they apply automatically and consistently across invoices, your checkout pages, and all of your payment flows. No patchwork configurations, no manual overrides, just setup that works everywhere. For your customers, there's a full transparency baked in. They see the surcharge amount and the required disclosure right at the moment of payment. That means no surprise charges, no confused support tickets, no disputes. And on your operations side, reconciliation becomes dramatically cleaner. The surcharge is tracked alongside the transaction, so your team isn't doing manual math or hunting across multiple reports to figure out what was collected versus what was a fee. Everything lines up. Less cost, better visibility, happier customers. That's surcharging with Maxio Payments. If you're interested in credit card surcharging and would like to see an in-depth demo of this functionality, check out the webinar link in the chat. You can also reach out to your account manager for more information. Next up, let's shift to something that anyone managing payments operations is going to appreciate, the Maxio Payments balance report. If you've ever tried to close out the month and found yourself piecing together payment activity from multiple places, your processor, your dashboard, a spreadsheet, maybe an export or two, you know how painful that process can be. And when funds are in transit or fees don't line up the way you expected, it can turn a routine reconciliation into a multi-hour investigation. That's the problem this report was built to solve. The Maxio balance report gives you a complete single view picture of everything happening inside your Maxio Payments account. We're talking opening balance, every transaction that came through, fees, deposits, and your closing balance. All in one place, all in one report, no toggling between systems, no manual stitching. It's a purpose built for the end of the month reconciliation, but honestly, it's useful at any time you need a clear read on where your money stands. One of the most common pain points we hear from payments teams is visibility into funds in transit, money that's been collected but hasn't settled yet. The balance report surfaces that clearly, so you always know what's settled, what's on its way, and what's still pending. For finance and operations teams, this is the kind of tool that turns a successful close process or a stressful close process into a straightforward one. You spend less time chasing down numbers and more time actually acting on them. If reconciliation is something your team currently handles manually or across multiple tools, this is a meaningful upgrade. And it's live today in Maxio Payments for Maxio Payments customers. Thanks, Chris.
Chris, I think you're on mute.
I am. Thank you so much. I was just saying, Jonathan, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. One thing I wanted to double click on is what Jonathan said of like that extending, the presentation of the surcharge and the notification. If you're leveraging our CPQ offering as well for our click and sign and pay functionality, it actually even renders at the quote generation as well, and that's carried all the way through. So the surcharging functionality is kind of through and through all of the ways that a customer can sign up and pay. And we're really excited to bring that to market. That's a bit of, a lot of work from the team. It's very difficult to do from a compliance and kind of flow process, but the team's put a ton of thought and effort into that. So please do check out that webinar. We're coming up right on the hour, and shout out Jeff in the chats. If your chat moved to the Q&A section, it's that separate tab. It looks like Jeff was able to get through most of those. Scrolling through it, I see we have a few opportunities to follow up and connect with you all. But if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or you just want to connect or have feedback, here's my contact information, my email. Please reach out. If there's something that comes across your mind after this webinar, still reach out. We'd love to engage and welcome any feedback. But with that, we'll give you some, a minute of your time back. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn about Maxio. And please use the upvote functionality and the feedback. We love hearing from our customers and being responsive to our customers. So thanks again. And thank you, team. Great session.